when it comes to folks who are highly functional that are struggling with suicidal ideations,
Yeah.
would you say approaching them becomes more of a, I need to convince my friend of the reality of what's going on versus, hey, I know everything has been okay, but are you okay?
Yeah.
Because when you're highly functional, technically you prove to yourself that you don't need help because it's like, I'm getting it done.
Yeah.
Right. But then you have these periods of, do I not need help?
Yeah.
And like, that's important.
Yeah. And that's the hard part too, is it's like learning to understand that like I'm not okay, but that I'm not okay doesn't mean like there aren't, that I still am, I can still go through my life and be happy.
Yeah.
And I can still work on the fact that I'm not okay. And that I'm not okay isn't a holistic like look at myself. You know what I'm saying? Like, just because I'm saying I am not okay doesn't mean that that is like the judgment of truth on who I am. Like, I am not okay, but at the same time, there are other elements of me that are okay.
Yeah.
And so there's this, are my emotions okay? Is my burnout okay? No, not at all.
The fact that burnout is normalized in that sentence too.
Yeah.
You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you're acknowledging burnout, but it's like, well, I mean, we're used to this, and
we're
it's
used
like,
to this.
That's kind of dangerous when you've become used to that. Yeah.
And so the sort of what I was trying to get at was that there needs to, like, I really feel like there needs to be a way for kids, or at least like, especially kids, but also young adults, to be able to go somewhere, whether it's something like a suicide hotline or it's just like a mental health inquiry, and be able to say, look, like you're saying, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
I'm burning out. I'm having these thoughts about killing myself. Would I do it? Hell no.
Yeah.
You know, and there are people who might not say hell no, but there's also a lot where it's like they're having these thoughts and they can't articulate them because they're afraid that if they go forward, everything that they're doing is going to be, and all their progress in the areas where they are feeling okay get stripped away from them.
Yeah.
And so there's this, it's not a happy medium because we're talking about suicidal ideation.
Yeah.
But there is sort of a middle ground where it's like, we're gonna get you the help you need. We need to scale things back.
Yeah.
But we're not gonna like set everything back to ground zero. Like, you know, and I think it's important that kids feel, and these young adults feel like they can communicate that they're having these moments, because I think people don't, at least I never wanted to call the hotline unless I was getting to a point where I was seriously contemplating.
Yeah. And then for me, that's another thing that I talk to people quite often about. It's unfortunate that when it's an emergency, that's when people reach out, or that's when people do the hotline. But technically speaking, when it comes to mental health and when it comes to spiraling, there are stops to the spiral. There's like, if we played baseball, you got base 1, 2, 3, and 4. By the time the call's made, folks are already naturally hovering at third base, going to fourth. Yeah. And what that means is there's an urgency in your situation being taken care of, or folks putting a Band-Aid on it and needing a solution. Instead of, if we start at base 1 or 2, there's consideration in how you're being handled, how you're being listened to, the right language that is necessary for if an emergency happens, or you getting to advocate for yourself, or someone in that situation getting to advocate for themselves in terms of, how would you like to be talked to in an emergency? How would you like to be treated? Because it's not just humanity. Sometimes there are trigger words where it's like, could you please not say that in the middle of my emergency? And like, before the emergency, unfortunately, is the best time to have the conversation, because in the emergency, 50% of words that you're saying, people aren't sure if you're just saying that because you're having a moment with suicide, or if you're saying that because you're trying to manipulate your way out of it. And it's like, well, help is still supposed to be help. Yeah. You get what I'm saying? And I mean, a lot of work that we do now, I put the onus, there's still responsibility for the person going through it. You feel what I'm saying? Yeah. Because it stops and can be handled by that person, and everybody else is just help. But the environment is the people. The environment's not just like the lawn chair, the front porch, the fence. No, the environment are your mom, dad, associates, friends, how they treat you, how they look at you, the things that they're no longer saying, and you watching that environment change.
Yeah, I agree. Like, and I love the analogy of the bases, and I love the reality of the subject.
Yeah.
But, you know, people often, especially in the world of like privilege, will talk about like, well, this person was born on third, and they, you know, act like they hit home, or they're born on third, and they, you know, with money or other things. But it's also like true to a certain extent with mental health, where like, especially with how these things are factored into genetics and environments, like a lot of people are born on like third base when it comes to their mental health and like where they're positioned for the future.
Yeah.
And we need to like try and figure that out in early childhood education, like getting people access to therapy early, because a lot of people are born into situations where it's really like unfortunately grim, just based off of certain things that they're predisposed to.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's not the brightest reality,
but it's still our reality.
It's still a reality.
Life.
It comes with life. Like everyone is born in a different position, and like with our, you know, behavior, we think a lot about how it's like it comes to chance or sort of who you meet and stuff. But a lot of it is really like, wow, like there are a lot of kids out there that need help in early childhood in order to combat the certain things which are positioning them for something like a bipolar disorder or, you know, some other mental illness, mood, psychotic, personality, whatever nature it is.
Yeah.
And so with the bases, I agree, where it's like on one hand, it works with the thought, and there's sort of stages to how you get from, you know, the batter's box of maybe feeling kind of good to all the way back around the bases where something like a hotline comes in question.
Yeah.
These, you know, things become cyclical, and I mean, damn, sometimes it's hard to talk about this stuff.
No, I got you. Take your time.
It is a very like concerning situation for me, especially where like I look at how blessed I was as a kid, and like, you know, the fact that I'm here now and was able to graduate from college by now, given what happened, like that wouldn't be possible without a lot of very like important institutional and treatment practices put in place, which allowed me to kind of prevail over some demons or like work through some bumps in the road.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of other kids out there who I'm sure like they would be in the same position, but the system is gamed against them. And so whereas like I'm born on like, you know, on home or first, as far as like how far away I am from, you know, one of they call the hotline, there's a lot of people who are born, you know, we talked about how important it is, like my parents were together and stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of kids who come from different backgrounds, and it's just going to be it's a much different, you know, everyone's challenge is, I don't want to weigh them greater or smaller, but it's a different challenge, and one, and based off what we know from like, you know, sociological factors is going to put you a lot closer to the hotline. And so I just really hope that, you know, we get to a place where we have much better mental health support for kids, where, you know, we're not looking back and guessing like, oh, would something have helped me when I was younger? And, you know, where we know that there are certain things that we can do to help kids the minute they get suspended in kindergarten, the minute they start having suicidal ideation in 4th grade. Like there is the right, or not necessarily right, but there is an optimal or suggested path for them, and we can put them on it.
And there's a window that's open.
Yeah.
I think right now what we're seeing is most schools are working towards mental health now, but they're still afraid to talk about the subject of suicidal ideations. They would like to talk about depression, but there's not enough education, and they're not doing enough research. And then as a teacher, it's kind of unfair because there's only so many hours you have in the day after being underpaid at a job. And then you now have to be responsible for this heavy subject where you as a teacher may not be comfortable with speaking on that, especially if you feel you have a lack of knowledge or experience, especially when it comes to children.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And I remember, like, especially with the depression in kids and kind of the attitude towards it, also for kids too, understanding that kind of psycho ed, as we see, like, you know, a lot of kids nowadays hear terms like depression or ADHD or autism or, you know, something in their classroom.
Yeah.
And it's such a hidden topic. There is no discussion of it.
Watered down.
It's all watered down.
Watered down.
And like there are pros and cons to it. They understand the pros, and so they just think it's all a con. There's just, it's all watered down. And I remember, you know, going back to my journey when I was in like 8th grade, there was like a really brave young girl who was in my class at another school, and she posted her story, or at least some aspects of her story, on YouTube. And she started talking to people about the fact that she was depressed. She was going to take time away from school. And my initial thought, you know, not having heard much about it, was, well, for one, you know, this is super brave, and I don't know how she's, you know, able to like come out with all this stuff. But also, like, she basically just saying that like she's just very upset about a lot of stuff in her life, and she's sad all the time. And like when you're depressed, it's a different state of mind. It's even though it's not considered a psychotic disorder, it's almost like a different reality of mood. Like someone who's depressed, like their sky is green, and someone who's not, their sky is blue. And then but there's a whole spectrum to it, because the mind isn't just like depressed or not depressed, or manic depressed and depressed. It's colors of the sky. And like people are just like, oh, they're just mad, you know.
And it's like, oh, how could you not think the sky is beautiful from the person who sees it as blue, but for the person who sees it as green, you're like, why would you ever think that's beautiful? Like, do you not see that tint of green that is spoiling the mood to everything that's going on?